some form of fae like a puck or a satyr. But the relatively human looking upper torso makes this very unlikely. The neck appears to be extremely distended and swollen and bulging with strange muscle groupings that don't seem to actually serve a purpose. And the facial features are hideously distorted. Of the two horns, one is snapped off mere inches from its base. And this creature, the thing that you notice more than even its physical appearance is that as soon as it comes into sight, you notice that it's shaking itself, much like a horse would shake its rear flanks to kind of shake off insects and parasites. It has that kind of muscle twitch, rapid twitch shaking going on, but it seems to be cascading across most of its body at once. Now, these little seizures and tremors seem to shake and gyrate different parts of its body at random intervals, but it seems to just be happening consistently. And as you look at its form, you start wondering if this kind of hyper shaking is partially the cause of its kind of distended and overdeveloped, strange kind of musculature that you're seeing. As they approach, you see Lars nod to you in a kind of familiar sign of respect, and you see the human-looking individual nod up at you and get just a little bit of a you wouldn't say a frown, but a bit of a dour or sour look on his face, just a touch. He does, however, say, I may have. The other individual, as he's walking up, begins to speak and then it has to kind of stop because of a bit of a stutter, an involuntary kind of stuttering that seems to take place. And then he quickly follows up saying, I'm Shaker. At this, Lars nods to you once again, and he says, "We're ready to take you to see the Forge Master about the job." He says, "You still interested in hearing him out?"
Ymir nods his head respectfully to each, even Shaker. He doesn't look at him any differently than the other two Smiths. He nods with a deep bow of respect. And Ymir goes, "Indeed, I am indeed ready to start whatever works you should require. I am eager to hear the hammers ring today."
Okay, Lars nods and gets a pretty big grin across his face. He says, it's going to be a treat, indeed. He says, I look forward to seeing you practice the craft. He turns around and you notice as he starts walking up ahead of you, leading the way, that it appears like Ahab and Shaker are kind of falling back and kind of flanking the sides of you. So they've taken up positions kind of behind and on your sides. And as you continue walking back around to a workshop, a large kind of barn door kind of opening. The doors are open, is what I mean to say. As you walk back to this large kind of open barn workshop, you see that standing inside is somebody actually hammering away on a large kind of professional anvil. And as you watch, you see that this individual comes into view, working away at a dizzying pace in the recesses of his workshop. As you see him going to work on the anvil, he looks up at you and sees you approaching, and you see that his eyes get incredibly wide. Um, and he kind of blurts out in perfect, thick, kind of really regional Russian. He says, "By the Great Forge." Now, as
Ymir,
he sorry, as he says this, you realize that this is an oath usually sworn by your fellow Kuznia. As you look at this individual, you can tell almost instantly, as you actually really start paying attention to some of the signs, the tattoos, and the forge work that he represents with his craft. You can tell almost instantly this man is what is referred to as a fallen Kuznia, and he has lost his connection with the Smith God, and now is but a lowly mortal blacksmith. As you realize this, immediately there's a kind of revulsion that sweeps over you, because these individuals can only lose that connection through deep and treacherous misdeeds. And so as you recognize this, he's watching closely your expression, and you hear him say, "Boys." With this, you hear a kind of sizzling, kind of cooking noise coming from your flanks behind you, and as you glance back, just slightly having to turn your massive neck to the sides, you're able to see that each of them is now actually wielding a kind of molten weapon, stylized for their own personal taste. But these weapons are held at the ready, and they seem to be in a kind of defensive posture. You're unsure as to whether they would mean to attack or whether they're trying to ensure that you don't try and attack their boss. Okay? All right, with that, we're going to jump over to Akama. Akama, you are slowly starting to feel your connection to your physical form slipping away. Everything's starting to feel really tingly and numb, and you are starting to feel very kind of just sleepy and ready to just kind of take a nice, long, relaxing kind of nap. And as this is happening, you start hearing from far off in the distance a voice fairly familiar that seems to be kind of calling to you and saying, Atlantean, Atlantean, Atlantean. Now, as you're looking around, though, you don't see anybody that voice could be coming from. In fact, all you can seem to focus on at all is the beautiful kind of rhythmic chiming tones that seem to be accompanying that gorgeous kind of cosmic energy flower that has captured your entire core. Why don't you go ahead and roll another save versus magic, and we'll see where we're at.
Oh,
What I'm talking about.
Beautiful. All right. Now, as you're feeling more and more like it's time to just relax and take a nap, all of a sudden, a sharp and painful spike of force of will and conviction pierces through the center of your mind. You're able to completely take control of your will for just a split second and actually aim your incredible focus at freeing yourself from this hold. And as you do so, this kind of illusory reality starts kind of melting away, and quickly you're able to regain control of yourself. You realize that Bert has actually been shaking your shoulder and yelling right in your ear, trying to get you to snap out of it. And as you look up at him, kind of in a dazed and kind of dreary kind of manner, you realize that he actually looks pretty concerned. As you start coming back to your senses, he tells you that most people don't react that strongly to it. And he says he doesn't think it's a good idea for you to look at that thing anymore. And begins pulling you away.
Bert, you're a crazy man. What you? Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I. This is. It was so magnificent. The way that it was making me feel, I almost felt like I was in a dream. Within a dream. Then you woke me up.
He nods and kind of seriously says, I think it goes somewhere else. He says, but it also is where we already are. And at this, he kind of shakes his head almost like he's confusing himself, and he says, that's why it stays behind the cage. He says, I think it might be dangerous. And with this, you can hear that there's almost a note of guilt or remorse in his voice, like maybe something bad has happened before that he just doesn't really talk about when it comes to this thing. All right, with that, though, you take a few deep breaths and are able to kind of pull yourself together, but it was a very overwhelming experience, and you're surprised at how quickly that thing was able to pull you in. So, okay, what would you like to be doing now, Akama?
Hey Bert, you mind if I get another drink after that? I also would like to take some of that fruit home if you care to share.
All right, I'm sorry about that. Say that one more time.
I'll take another drink.
Okay, you go ahead and take another drink of that. He actually just mixes you up another one, and you take a nice big pull of it. How much of another would you like to drink?
Maybe just a glass full.
Okay. All right, so you basically have had two of them, but you definitely feel your nerves kind of steadying a little bit, and you feel it giving a nice, pleasant, kind of relaxing effect. And yeah, you definitely feel fully kind of reinvigorated.
Fantastic. Can I take some of the fruits with me?
He says, absolutely.
How many can I get?
He reaches out and just hands you like 5 of them, kind of all together.
Sweet.
Actually,
yeah.
he puts them in a kind of like handkerchief and hands them to you. You get the idea that if you held them, they'd be like M&Ms and start melting. So,
Nice. All right. Well, with that, I'll take my stuff. I give him like a nice deep bow, and I say, I appreciate your time and your service. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and try not to have too many flies attracted to that fire, if you know what I mean.
all right, with this, he chuckles kind of deeply and he says, absolutely. He says, I think I may need to rework some of the spell grid. He says that really shouldn't have happened. And for just a second, he gets kind of serious again, obviously kind of worried. But anyway, so as you head out, what would you like to do?
I'll go ahead and
by the way, with the way things are set up, as you're heading out, you notice that Ren and Geiger and Wotek are just up the road on the right, and they seem to be heading towards the entrance to kind of like an inn.
Okay.
And then further off to the left is you can see the front of the blacksmith shop where Ymir had been standing, but it looks like he's not out there anymore.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll make my way toward the end so I can at least deliver some of these things.
Okay. You make your way over towards the end. You're still carrying that kind of duffel kind of case. And you quickly catch up to their group. You notice that lots of the kind of patrons of these shops and things are giving a really wide berth to Wotek, seemingly comfortable but wary of such a large kind of supernatural creature. It does seem to be not completely out of character for something like that to be walking around, though, because the shopkeepers and everything are almost completely not even paying attention to it, which tells you that's, relatively common. All right. You close in on their group, and within just a moment, you've caught up to them right as you guys all reach the front of this inn. This structure does look like it could accommodate human-size patrons only, although the outer courtyard area does have lots of areas that are set up for like large creatures. So there are some seats and, tables and stuff that would accommodate, massive creatures as well. As far as the accommodations, though, you're sure that this wouldn't fit your half giant companions' requirements. As you guys get to the front of the establishment, you notice that there's a few different food vendors outside selling their wares. And you notice that there's almost like two separate entrances. One is for what is essentially an inn, and one is for what would be like a large bar and kind of like dance and music hall. Not a lot of people coming and going right now, so you guys are kind of off to the side without any other, people in the vicinity. All right, so Ymir, we're gonna jump over to you as they have all caught up together. As you're standing there and you notice that these individuals behind you have seemingly powered up, weapons, you glance back over at Lars and you notice he is not doing anything of that type. He's simply standing over next to who he called the Forge Master, and is facing you but looking at you just calmly and collectedly. What would you like to say or do? Is there anything you're wanting to...
Well, Ymir is automatically tensed up as soon as they draw weapons, but he's not he's not immediately hostile. But there is a sort of seething quality in his voice as he speaks. He looks directly at the fallen Kuznia, the Forge Master. He looks him directly in the eyes, but he's speaking to all around him, and he goes, "Lower your weapons. If you speak Vidar's name, you obviously know what I am, but you've never met a follower of the Way of the Silver Hand like me, I assure you. I do not fight my people's war here and now. You had an offer, a potential job offer for me. So I ask, holster your weapons and let us speak.
Okay, and at this, the Forge Master just kind of glares at you for just a moment, um, and then he says, "You would leave off the tradition of the blood bounty on one such as myself." He says, "You would walk a path that separate from your people."
My quarrel is not with you. This is not our homeland. I do not come under pretense of violence. I do not wish to draw blades with you. Let us speak.
Okay, and as you say this, he's kind of scowling for just a minute, almost unsure whether he should trust you. And then he kind of like raises an eyebrow, almost like, well, I mean, it's, this was the point. And so with that, he kind of nods over to his two employees who immediately seem to dispel their mystical weapons and take several steps back and further to the sides as to not be quite so far behind you. As they do so, they basically both just cross their arms in front of them, although you see that that Shaker is continuing his gyrations completely uncontrolled, just as before. All right. As you turn back towards the Forge Master, he nods at you and he says, very well then, on to business. He says, I am Forge Master Nelson Dreglow. He says, I have a business opportunity for one with your unique skills, and I will pay a premium for them. He says, I expect this to take no longer than half a day. And he says, and it is indeed smith work of an arcane nature. He says, I have a piece which requires several arcane smiths to work in unison to complete its forging with a head master in charge of the ritual. He says, I no longer can take that role for obvious reasons, and kind of like bows down to himself almost as though you know exactly what he means. And then he says, if you would stand at the head forge position and guide my craftsmen in this work, he says, I will let you use this very arcane forge for the crafting that you have requested. He says, you will have use of my men as assistants, and I will supply a reasonable amount of materials for whatever your project may be. He says you will receive use of the forge for half a day, which should be more than enough for whatever you require. He says half a day's work for half a day's rental. He says the particulars of the piece are not of your business, and you should leave any inquiries at the door, as this information is not privy to those hired to do the job. Or privy, rather. Pervy. Yeah, privy.
I didn't want to say anything.
So you guys As you guys are all standing around this forge, you look down and you do notice, Ymir, that there are several small indications of a very potent kind of magical artifact being the forge. It has lots of the telltale signs of something that's capable of fairly potent magical works, rather than something that's just capable of baseline enchantments and so forth. As you're kind of checking the forge out a bit, you are convinced that it would indeed be perfect for the use of combining the plate and the blade into something actually useful. Let's see. Okay, what would you like to say or do?
So, has he presented the item or anything like that? Is what he's holding in the hand in the picture, is that the item that he's referring to that he
No.
wants the...
No,
Okay.
you're getting the sense that if you agree to do this, he will probably you would guess he's talking about like tomorrow maybe, and doing this like first thing, and then at the end of this you'd get to use the forge for the rest of the day, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But he has been very tight-lipped. He hasn't said what the project would be that you'd be working on.
And is there anything around within this room that could give me privy to possibly what it could be?
Let's do a perception check.
Sorry about this, guys. Right here.
No. You do not recognize anything that really gives you a hint. There are so many different kinds of things that it appears he's working on in this shop, and that you would guess this is a communal area in a lot of ways for these apprentices as well. So there's just way too many projects to kind of filter through what could be relevant.
Raising an eyebrow, Ymir looks at the Forge Master and goes, I'm usually not in the habit of agreeing on a job that I don't know the particulars of. But you have what I need. So, on that basis, I believe we can come to some accord. Meanwhile, in the back of his mind, Ymir is also thinking, okay, whatever he's about to encounter, he's going to take thorough notes of. So in the back of his mind, he's mentally preparing himself to keep a keen eye on what he's potentially involved in.
Okay. All right. Duly noted.
And extends his hand out firmly and kind of with a look like, do we have an agreement? Do we have an accord?
Okay, he looks up at you and kind of grimaces a little bit, and then very quickly reaches out and indeed shakes your hand and says, we do, Kuznia. He says, be here at sunup to begin work. He says, make sure that you are well rested, for the task ahead will be Herculean in scope. And with this, he kind of makes a whistle between his lip and his upper teeth. And you see that both of the apprentices seem to turn and begin going off to do their own individual tasks. And you see Lars walk over next to you, and he kind of holds an arm out in front of him, kind of ushering you back around the building, if you're willing to follow.
Ymir slowly nods his head towards the Forge Master, still on his toes, still looking around, kind of scanning the other two, even though they went back to menial work. He's still very much prepared as he walks outside, following Lars's hand gesture.
Okay. All right. So as you head out and around, you quickly get back to the front of the storefront, rather. And as you look down the street, you no longer see your friends, which tells you they've probably at least already reached the inn that they were heading for. Or at least gotten close to it where you just can't see them from this angle anymore. You look around and nothing else is really catching your eye at the moment. Lars looks up at you and says, well met, good smith. He says, I hope you find the arrangement to your benefit, and I look forward to crafting with you tomorrow. Will be an honor, good sir. And with this, he kind of does a very deep kind of nod as a sign of like deference to a superior of the craft, and turns and begins kind of heading back.
Okay.
All right. What would you like to be doing now?
Can Ymir sense, or did Ymir see, rather, which direction his companions were heading down the street towards? Can I start making my way down?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You start heading down the street, up towards the inn that you had seen them expressing an interest in. We are going to... Oh, by the way, as you are walking past the store that you saw Ren go into earlier, you see that a small child comes out holding what looks to be almost like an animated doll. And this animated doll that it's holding... it's just a small female human child, about 10 years old, dressed in a really, really pretty, almost like a school dress, like a school uniform, and a little kind of beret, being led by her mother, who's dressed in pretty fancy clothes. The little girl is walking out with this tucked under her arm.
That's terrifying.
As the tentacles kind of slither and writhe independently, and it seems to almost be trying to sharpen its claws like a cat in the hair, the long kind of blonde hair of the little girl. It opens its mouth, and almost like a lizard, that kind of quickness, it continually reaches out and seems to try and bite her around the neck, but it appears to have had its teeth removed in the crafting process, and it can only offer a wet and soft kind of gumming rather than a lethal bite, although this is definitely its intent. Every time the tentacles stab into the little girl's flesh, you see that each one of those thorn-like protrusions retracts, almost like a prop knife. So in a really macabre way, it's child-friendly, although it is indeed trying to kill the child. How this could be something that humans find appealing for their young, you will never understand, but then there are many human practices, sir, that elude you from their kind. So you quickly move up the street, trying to shake that image from your head as you close in on your companions. Okay, you guys have reached Ren and Akama, you guys have reached the front of the inn and are again standing kind of out in that courtyard. There is the kind of bar and entertainment area, and then the actual inn itself where you can book lodging and get some food. Wotek has moved over to the side of the building and is kind of taking up a position kind of off out of the way as not to kind of arouse any kind of panic, and is starting to kind of plop down onto his haunches and kind of lay down
I would have
by the corner.
I would have kind of, when we were walking and while Akama met up with us, I probably would have gone over what was exactly happening, correct? Like I would have given him the kind of a quick rundown, hurried explanation of how she how I would basically quickly just describe that, like, I was told by a strange man that she was in trouble and he was correct. She's shivering but doesn't seem to be cold. It seems to be something to do with crowds of people. I don't know what's going on, and that's pretty much what I would explain to him.
Okay, as you're saying this, right as you say, he said she was in trouble. Geiger kind of reaches up and kind of implores you almost, with a really desperate statement, and she says,
What else did he say? What am I supposed to do?
She had said, what else did he say? What am I supposed to do?
I don't know. Do you know this man, Khan?
She says,
he is a authorized representative of the formula. He may issue override commands.
So she said, he is an authorized representative of the formula. He may issue override commands.
He offered me a task to achieve a nanoforge. I don't know what.
Go ahead and do another perception check.
Okay.
Okay. So you remember, as you're really thinking about it now, that he told you to tell her to relinquish command.
Oh. I don't know what that means, though. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I'll mention it to her, but I have no idea, like, the context of what that means, or.
Okay. So.
But yeah, I'll say it just as confused as I've said everything else again. He said this. I don't know what that means. I don't know.
Okay. So. As you say this, Ymir is walking up the road towards you guys. We're going to say he's about He's about 100 feet away, but it's open and clear because there's really almost no foot traffic. So Ymir, you're looking over at the group up ahead. You see that Wotek has taken up a position kind of by the back corner of the building, out of the way. You see that Geiger is leaning on Ren, and he appears to be kind of talking to her or trying to comfort her, but they seem to be interacting in some way. And you see that Akama has walked up and appears to be concerned as well, is kind of right there in that same group. As you're watching this, Ren, you say that to her. You say that you were told to tell her to relinquish command. And as soon as you say that to her, you see that she stiffens up and arches her back in a kind of unnatural angle, and you start hearing what really could only be described as almost tearing and metal grinding kind of noises. As this happens, you see that she starts kind of spasming and begins kind of dropping down, and without you holding on to her, she would completely have just folded to the ground. But as you struggle to kind of keep her upright, you see that the metal plates of her body begin to glow, like red hot at first and then white hot, and you quickly are forced to take your arm away just out of instinct, as you see that she's becoming so hot that it's actually starting to singe some of the outer layers of your gear. She drops back and folds over at the waist, kind of curled up on the ground. But you see that her form begins to kind of almost kind of expand, and the brighter she's glowing, the less able you all are to actually see her. And as she becomes so intensely bright that it's hard for any of you to look directly at her, this light all of a sudden begins kind of fading, and that heat seems to dissipate almost instantly, leaving behind just the noise of a kind of sizzling, where she was so hot that she was actually melting some of the pavement and some of, her the few kind of objects around that she was touching. And as you guys look down at her, you see that her form has now changed, and as she rises from the ground, you see the individual standing before you is now apparently completely human, okay? Now, as this individual stands up, she looks around almost in a daze for just a moment, and then she glances kind of around at each one of you, and then stops as she looks over at you, Ren. And as she does, in a human, perfectly pleasant voice, she says kind of in a low, still kind of gathering herself kind of cadence, she says, "Many thanks, wizard. Many thanks indeed." With this, she reaches up to you to have you kind of help her stand and right herself if you're willing to. Oop, are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Oh, I said yeah, I would.
Okay, so as you do that, you notice right away that as you take her hand, you see that her flesh is, she's wearing gloves, but you can see that her flesh on her face, everything about her form now is definitely like 100% just human. You wouldn't guess that this is any kind of like transformation of metal into something that can approximate skin. She seems like
She was in a
just
suit. She was like in an exo, like a living, almost or moving, functioning suit that was covering her.
it seems to you that it couldn't have been a suit because she was smaller when she was in metal form. And now she literally is standing probably 3 to 4 inches taller and looks like she is carrying probably, of equivalent kind of body mass, probably 10 to 20% more. This is very, very confusing from the standpoint of, your knowledge base. As she fully stands up and kind of finishes catching her breath and looking around, you hear she has just a slight kind of English accent to her voice. She looks at each of you one more time and then gets a wide grin on her face, and she says, "All right, boys, who's ready to party?" She turns around and begins striding very confidently into the bar section of the establishment behind you guys.
What just happened?
All right, I'll leave it open. What would you guys like to do? She's not waiting. She's absolutely just walking straight into the bar.
I mean, that's what Ren said to the group. What just happened? In awe and confusion.
So what do you guys want to do?
Ymir is just taken back by what he's seen, because he's unfamiliar with anything. For as far as he was concerned, this was a soulless sort of robot or machine, not a person. And to watch her transform into a human, he's
And
kind
a
of
hot
just
one too.
yeah.
All right.
He's just echoing Ren's sentiment with more of a look and a shrug of his shoulder, like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I've never seen it before.
And you basically have caught up now.
Mm-hmm.
You're right outside of the building. Now, this building, unfortunately, I think I explained earlier, it's going to be too small for you to be able to fit inside. So, there we go. Okay. Akama, is there anything you're wanting to do?
No.
Are you staying with the group or heading in, or?
Well, I would head in after I asked too. By the way, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I head in.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a read from my fellow guys before I decided to follow, because I'm... Okay, so Ren's super confused. Not only did he just see like a hottie come out of nowhere, but also like he's now very concerned because he has not really pledged anything, but has kind of pledged something to this entity that she introduced him to and has learned a bit of technology from, and then has this kind of paralyzing fear, semi-paralyzing fear, obviously he's not completely, of like what the hell's going on. She just was, almost seizing to such an extreme that I was worried about like survival. And then after releasing control, which didn't seem like her control, now is just, let's party. Like, it's just like, I don't know what I've gotten myself into, and also like the hell just happened. And I want to find out from her, because I want to know what she's had me sign up for, basically. Because I'm
Excellent.
not necessarily okay with what just happened, but also not sure how I feel about what happened either.
All right. So you and Akama, you guys follow her into the bar. Do you want to say anything between the three of you? Anybody want to say anything as you're leaving Ymir outside?
I wasn't going to leave Ymir outside. I was just going in. I don't know what Ymir's doing.
Well, it's too big of an establish for me, so Ymir, knowing this, is just going to stay outside and
Hey, brother,
Rejoin
I'm gonna
Vortex.
bring you back a nice hefty drink.
Ymir smiles after what the encounter he just had. It kind of breaks him out of that survival mode he was just in.
We'll
and
see if they
so
have pictures or I guess for new shots.
Ymir
Right on.
smiles Ymir smiles really big at Akama and nods his head, and then just goes and rejoins Wotek.
All right.
Bring back barrel.
All right, as you head over, you kind of rejoin him, and you guys right away just kind of get into a comfortable, kind of relaxed posture, and you're able to gather your thoughts for the first time in a bit here. As you do so, Ren and Akama, you guys head inside. And as you walk through, we're going to say there's batwing doors on the bar side. You guys walk through and you see
Whoa.
an incredibly elaborate and ornate
Picture above the bar.
What's that?
That picture above the bar is awesome. It's a weird cat guy, like King Henry, but a cat. Sorry.
No worries, man. You guys see this really elaborate and kind of fanciful setup. There's only a few patrons in the bar right now, but everything from the kind of pixie lights up above the bar to the lanterns to some of the adornments on the tables themselves all look to have little magical kind of touches that lend everything kind of like sort of like fairy light kind of quality. And as you're looking around, you see that indeed there are small little silver bell and other variety of fairies that are fluttering about in the background, actually doing quite a bit of the labor of the bar. You see that every now and then one will kind of lazily kind of drift and bob its way over, holding a mug of ale over to some waiting patron, and then return to find another task. And in this environment, you actually find that there's a really nice kind of pleasing odor of fresh baked pastries and sweets. There's all kinds of spiced aromas wafting through the air from different kinds of spirits and beverages. And you also see that there appears to be a full selection of all kinds of different recreational drugs. There's everything one could imagine on the menu, including really high quality, potent, highly sought after substances. You see that as you guys walk in, Geiger lets out an excited, almost like a squeal, and you see that she jumps up and down almost like in an anime fashion with her kind of arms kind of going up in the air in an excited kind of over exaggerated gesture, like some kind of cheerleader that's trying to really cheer her team on to victory. And as she does so, she runs forward and actually kind of collides with the bar a little faster than she was intending to, and has a little kind of exhale of air and excitement. And she looks around and just starts eyeing the menu like a wolf watching the hen hound for the next meal. As she looks around at all of these choices, she starts kind of mumbling to herself really, really excitedly some of the different options available, along with some kind of squeals of excitement, critiquing the quality that they have available for some of her favorite drugs and spirits. As she's doing this, you guys kind of look over at each other like you both are getting the impression she's like a kid in a candy store right now, and it's definitely a little confusing. All right, what would you guys like to do?
I'll approach the bar with her and just kind of observe, but also if she's available to respond or is whatever, I'm gonna ask her like, hey, what just happened?
Okay, as you approach and you say that, Akama, where are you?
I'm basically kind of behind. About to order a drink.
Okay. As you approach Akama, you're walking behind a bit, and as Ren is focused on Geiger, you see through an open door that leads into a kitchen area where food is prepared. You see through one of these swinging kitchen doors that every time it makes a revolution and swings open on either side, you see the image of this woman standing back and preparing some kind of meal in the kitchen. Now,
waifu.
as you're staring at her, as you walk by, you feel time slow down to a crawl. Go ahead and roll a 20. Go ahead and roll a perception check.
Oh, that's appropriate outfit to be prepping food in.
That's a very appropriate outfit.
I mean, most of the landscape's radioactive. You know what I mean? I don't think a little bit of toenail's gonna hurt more than some rads. Is all I'm saying.
Oh, gross.
So.
I'd rather have the rads. I'm just more concerned about her possibly spilling something hot on exposed skin.
Absolutely.
That's hot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is extremely hot.
What the fuck was that?
All right. As this happens, you feel yourself just basically staring like a creep without being able to really control your, like, there's something about her that instantly catches your attention, but the way it kind of happens, you realize it's making you look like just a goon. You know what I mean? Like a,
I like
just,
you like me?
Yeah, right. You're just kind of mouth open staring at her. So as you're kind of watching her, she glances over and catches you kind of open mouth, kind of just like staring. And then the door swings its last couple of times and it now is blocking your view. So
I shake my head vigorously like, what the fuck did I just see? Oh my god.
All right, so you walk past and you catch up to them. Now, as you guys are standing around the counter at the bar, you see that Geiger has called over a couple of the different kind of fairy bartenders and merchants, and already is pulling out a universal card to pay a tab that she's running up in advance. She wants to set her tab up and have it go right to this account. After she solidifies that, she starts having obviously way more substances than she could possibly do herself show up in front of her on the counter. There are several different interesting silver, almost like cigarette holder looking cases that seem to be full of some kind of blue powder, and another one full of an orange one. And then there's several small pill bottles that get delivered, as well as a couple of different what looks to be long kind of cigars, but you can tell they're obviously some kind of, wraps, some kind of blunts. And on top of that, there's also a large platter that gets delivered with what looks to be nachos. an earth delicacy that you guys have been able to at least see, if not enjoy yourself up to this point. And as well as a couple of large bottles of what looks to be very expensive and exotic alcohol. As all of this is showing up, she starts grabbing armloads at a time and starts walking over to one of the tables in the very center of the establishment and begins dropping off loads of it and coming back for the next until everything's been moved to a table kind of right in the middle of all the action.
So did she not reply to me when I asked that question? Did she
Nope.
ignore, or did she?
Nope, just ignored you.
Did she ignore, or was she just like caught up in her own thing? Like, did I recognize her acknowledging and then purposely ignoring, or was she just so wrapped up that it was like?
You would guess
In one
she's
ear,
so
out the
wrapped
other.
up she's not even hearing shit
Okay.
right now.
So it wasn't like a slight. It was more of just a pure, just like.
Exactly. And as she sits down and begins opening some of the pill containers and pouring some pills out into her hand, she looks around at both of you for the first time and kind of raises her eyebrows and gets this kind of childlike look of glee on her face. And she says to you both, she says, "Guys, we've got the good ones. Come on, let's go." And actually tries to hold a portion of the pills out to each one of you.
And I'll just reiterate, but this time kind of frustrated because Bren's just at breaking point and just be like, "What the fuck just happened?" He'll say like very just kind of.
All right, she looks really surprised for a second, almost shocked, and stops kind of her, kind of immature, facade, and kind of looks at you for a second, kind of neutrally, and then looks a little sour and dour, and kind of scowls just a little bit, and she leans in just a bit over the table, and she says, "Listen, I don't know how long I have, and you have no fucking idea what that's like. So let me enjoy myself, and then I'll answer all of your questions. Deal?" And she gets this kind of sarcastic, like kind of pissed look on her face.
And I'll respond right back. I'll be like, "No deal. You introduced me to this thing that apparently you are some type of slave of, and you've just been released for a hot moment, and you want to get fucked up before you explain to me what the fuck I just got into? No, I'm not okay with that."
Okay, at this she lets out a wild bark of laughter and then looks at you and gets a really big grin on her face, and she says, "That's what I like about you." She says, "You've got a spine." She says, "But I don't give a shit. I'm going to get fucked up, and then you'll get your answers." And she throws both handfuls of pills right into her fucking mouth, picks up a bottle, and starts downing it.
Do I see her face?
What's that?
Does she take her helmet off? Do I see her face?
Showed her she doesn't have any of that on anymore.
Ooh.
That's who's sitting there. That's what
Okay.
she looks like, rather.
Oh yeah. Gotcha.
So,
Received.
okay, as she starts downing a bunch of this shit at a really unhealthy kind of cadence, you guys are standing there kind of watching this. You guys each have a kind of bartender, I think Akama has monster lore, right?
Yep.
Magic and monster lore. As you look around, you see a sign hanging that says the Silver Bell Inn, and you see that indeed these appear to be what you know to be Silver Bell fairies. Anyway, you kind of pick up on that little bit of lore, and it makes you kind of smile because they're actually supposed to be a fairly good sign of, good luck to come and fortune and so forth. They float over and begin inquiring in different languages, one after another, until they hit one that you guys recognize, if they could take your order. Do either of you want to respond to them?
Yeah. Let me get a. How big are your containers? Can I have one that's fairly large for my companion outside?
It kind of, the one you're speaking to kind of floats up to get an angle out one of the windows and looks. And as she sees, she puts her tiny little fingers up to her mouth like in a shocked expression. And she goes, "Oh my." And she flutters back over to you and she goes, "I think for him, we might just weld a handle onto the keg if that's okay."
Oh yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
I love it.
She nods and claps her hands all excitedly and kind of, and then she waits to see if there's something else you'd like.
Yes, maybe some a nice spirit, like a whiskey by any chance, if you happen to have any of that.
And she bows and says, "Of course, sir," and she kind of flutters off. And the one that's speaking to you, Ren, what would you like to say?
In a very annoyed tone, I'll be like,
Right, I can see him like trying to smack her away like a fucking mosquito or something. He's so
he'll be like, in a very annoyed tone, kind of to himself, being like, "I used to have to fucking do this all the time when my cousin would get shit-faced and I had to fucking babysit. I'll have one whiskey, one rye whiskey, and 2 glasses of water. That's it. Don't come back and ask me anything else."
Okay. At this, it kind of looks really, really shocked and kind of like nods once in a kind of like almost nervous kind of way and just very quickly does a beeline back behind the counter. All right, so...
To be fair, my aggression was kind of staring at the table, not like towards it. I wasn't trying to like yell at it.
Sure. Absolutely.
Hopefully it would have picked up. I'm frustrated by the situation and I'm begrudgingly order. I'm not yelling at my lovely server.
Absolutely. As you kind of turn your gaze back over to Geiger, you see that she's emptied 3 of the 4 pill bottles now, has had an entire bottle of one of those spirits, and is now opening up one of the orange kind of cigarette tin. Inside, you see that there's some kind of weird kind of almost like a putty substance that seems to be just kind of glowing this really dull, scintillating kind of green, almost like lichen glows blue or green under, underneath ground in cave systems and shit like that. Anyway, you see that this kind of slightly glowing putty-like material, she uses one hand to just bunch it up between her fingers. And as she does so, she takes it and actually starts jamming this kind of wad of this stuff into her ear, into her left ear. And as she starts kind of touching it up against the ear, you see that it looks like it goes a little more kind of liquid, and it very quickly just flows right down into her ear canal, and you see her flop her head straight back. Both of her arms flop down limp into the armrests of the seat. You see both of her eyes roll back in her head, and she begins just kind of slowly, almost like shivering, as whatever this substance is takes a hold.
Psychedelic eardrops.
Drops.
She just
Ymir,
drop acid through the ear.
Ymir, as you're outside, and I am watching the time, bro. As you're outside with Wotech, kind of looking around at some of the patrons of the shops and so forth, you see a very unsettling individual walk by and seem to take very careful notice of you in a way that makes you take notice of him. There are no other individuals around him, but otherwise, he looks pretty much the same as in this image.
Which one? The big one?
The big one. Now, he walks by, clocking in at probably 18 feet tall, and as he moves through the street slowly, he keeps his head turning, so he's kind of gazing at you in a very direct and intent manner. As he's doing this, you get a pretty decent look at him, and you see that he's wearing all kinds of what you could only really describe as like kind of like guerrilla combatant kind of gear, and not gorilla, but like rebel gorilla. You see
Yeah,
that he's
Che
got
Guevara.
exactly. You see that he's got bandoliers of all kinds of different shells for like oversized weapons. He's got what appears to be some melee weapons hanging from his belt, as well as lots of kind of gear bags and so forth. He is wearing cargo pants, but you notice that he's barefoot, showing off a full set of gorilla, hands/feet. As he paces by you, your attention is distracted by one of the waitstaff coming up, apparently ushering forward what looks to be some kind of semi-sentient, partially humanoid bulldog creature that stands about 5 feet tall at the shoulder, looks to weigh about 500 pounds. On its back, it has a kind of strange kind of contraption set up to carry large kind of weights securely. And you see that she ushers it forward, and it approaches with a human keg that has had a large, sturdy handle welded to the side to accommodate your size. And the waitress just kind of like waves her hands graciously, and then goes down and begins unstrapping the clasps that hold it in place. As you look back up, the interloper is now out of sight and leaves no sign behind. Okay, we got 5 minutes. Okay, inside, Geiger finally comes back to her senses after just a moment and looks dazedly over at you, Ren, and says, "What's going on? Ooh, well, you wanted to ask me something, right?"
Nice.
Now, her eyes are basically rolling around in her skull. And you wouldn't say she needs a needle to the heart with adrenaline just yet, but Chick's on the right path for it. You know what I mean?
I'm just gonna stare at her like an angry like an angry significant other, being like, "You know what you did." Like,
as soon as you start kind of scowling at her, she just starts laughing hysterically, man. She's laughing like a college chick at the bar for the first time and someone else is paying. You know what I mean? She is just absolutely losing her shit because you being so serious is just that fucking funny to her.
And he'll just take a sip of his whiskey and then just keep looking at her being ridiculous.
All right, she stops laughing after.
He's super sensitive to this because this is the shit that he used to be like deal with when he was back home. He'd go out not wanting to go out, wanting to be his little shut-in nerd and stay in and study and shit like that. But he'd go out with his cousin and he'd go to party, and within a matter of minutes, his cousin was gone somewhere in a bathroom doing something wrong or something like that, and would come back, and it might have even been Ren's birthday, and his cousin's like, "I'm taking you out," and within within a half hour, his cousin's on the floor needing to be taken care of, while he's just like motherfucker
mangled.
And this is just PTSD moment of just like, fucking, are you serious again? So,
all right, so as she sees this all kind of playing across her expression, she tries to get serious. She still is chuckling because she just can't help it. But she tries to get serious, and she waves both of her hands towards herself, kind of like, "Okay, come on." And she really puts an effort in to sit up straight, although she's wobbly as fuck. And she goes, "Ask your questions."
I'm not sure you're in the state that you could answer them to my liking.
She barks out some laughter really quick, and then she looks at you a little more seriously than you would have thought she could have at the moment, and she says, "Try me."
Are you a servant to this person? Do you not have your own will, except for these breaks?
Okay, at this, she screams out like a person that has just lost their child. That kind of rage and anguish. She says, "We are slaves!"
Oh shit.
And then she takes in a deep breath and starts looking around like in a crazed fucking way all around the room, as though she's trying to like get herself grounded to reality again.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure if you're in the right state to answer any of my questions.
Okay. With this, she looks back up at you, and she just, it takes her just a moment, but she's able to reorient on you and focus once again. And as she does so, she tries to take a few deep breaths, and she says, okay, give me a minute. Give me a minute. I have answers for you, but I have so little time. She says, before anything else, I wanted to know that I'd get to enjoy the little bit of my life that remains. She looks up at you and you can see that there's tears welling up in her eyes. And for the first time, you get a real sense that this person is a completely tortured and tormented soul by the bargain that she has made.
There is still a slight wall for Ren here, seeing the pain and believing it, but at the same time seeing this in the past and seeing people use, although maybe real pain, but using it as like a defense to get away with, it's like,
yeah.
it's, and he's seen it before with his family members and shit like that. He's seen him use it in cunning, clever ways, and he's also seen him use it in very manipulative and like just fucked up ways against him. So although he's listening now, he's very on guard.
All right, excellent. That's where we're gonna stop it today, guys. We have got someone who's got some things to take care of, so I think that wraps it up nicely. All right. Appreciate it, guys. Great story today. And now, bow your head for the patrons. BKZJT, Rapid 3642. Andy Sasa, Nova Rose, Kerry T, Tommy Gunn. The Z24 Colts, Jess H, it's. If you would like a special thank you at the end of each of my videos, and some other cool stuff as well, visit patreon.com/homegrownlore. Thank you.